Okay, so I have a lot to say today and it therefore will take quite a while. Not that it's really anything new here, but still, either grab some popcorn or your pitchforks and you'll know why maybe in a few moments. But right in time for this video, I actually finally changed my channel name to The Nitpicker. That's what I always was, that's what I always will be, so it shouldn't be really a surprise and no one should really wonder why I seem so particularly nitpicky, which is just normal for me. Maybe another reason though why it seems like that and why this video will be longer is that the Xiaomi Mi 8 that I'm gonna review today is a special device for me. Now why? Because I'm such a huge fan of the Xiaomi Mi 6, which is still in my opinion one of the best phones made ever. And the Mi 8 is just not quite that. It didn't quite replicate the same as the Mi 6 did back then. And for those wondering, why not review the Explorer Edition? Well, personally, I am not willing, just in terms of value, to sacrifice 400 mAh of battery to get some things like the in-display fingerprint reader and other things. I desire more value compared to lesser value, and getting a fake circuit board on the back, I don't know. Okay, so let's get into a few things like, for example, size. I don't have the OnePlus 6 here, which would be kind of a direct competitor, but since the 5T is just about as big, that comparison still works. Okay, as you can see, it's shorter and it's narrow, and I have to talk about that. As you can see, in my opinion, it looks noticeably narrower. And according to GSM Arena, it's just 0.4 millimeters. It looks way more to me, but as you can see, it also looks a little bit thicker. But if it just comes down to in-hand feel, this device is incredible. Very smooth. I like the glass back, but yes, of course, it attracts a lot of fingerprints. And it's sometimes a little bit slippery, but especially with the curves on the sides, the great build quality here with nothing creaking now, it feels amazing in the hand. But I will knock off half a star in terms of build quality just because I'm pretty sure, I'm very confident that the back material is the same as on the Mi 6, which means it will scratch up easier than some other back phones because it's not maybe quite proper glass. If it is, okay, but I feel it will scratch up easier. Otherwise, it doesn't really feel super hollow, so it feels good. It's fine. And half a star I will also knock off for the design, which I otherwise think it's great because the buttons are placed well and everything else, because of the notch, which I will talk about, maybe rant a little bit about later. What I'm not gonna rant about is absolutely not the fingerprint reader, because it's placed a little bit high for me. Okay, that's fine, but it's crazy fast. As you can see here, pretty much the best at the moment, since Huawei has taken a little bit longer now for their screens to turn in. This is pretty much the best you can get at. You can maybe see it right now. Face unlock works also well. Actually, usually it worked better because I'm now not sitting properly right there. Now the next thing, the camera. There is a bump, a small one, and a little bit of an odd thing is, even though we get a very nice case, it's a little bit on the loose side, but it gives some protection, is actually not thicker than the camera bulge. So no protection here, which is a little bit of an odd decision. Also maybe an odd decision, there is no IR blaster anymore for those who liked that, but still the microphone, dual SIM, nice to have. But what we don't have dual anymore is dual speaker system. They got rid of that, so only a one speaker system, microphone, USB Type-C, a flat front with a nice curve. Phone still feels great. We have a notification LED, which you will also need desperately, because you won't get any notifications, which is what brings me to the notch. I am absolutely against this notch. It's just way too big. As you can see, hide notch screen, it's a very big one. And usually on Huawei device, you had the option to enable to see the icons for notifications. This option is gone. No notifications. All you see is the clock, you see the battery, the signal, and you don't even see the battery in terms of percentages, which is just stupid. But what is also, in my opinion, hard to understand is why this notch, as you can see, actually goes up to here like this. So about over a millimeter, the notch is bigger than it actually is if you, for example, use the hide not option. As you can see here, it's like this. Why? Why? Because this looks just bad. And this is usually a solution, like for example on the OnePlus 6 or the Huawei P20 Pro, that's fine. But why did they have to make it bigger? Especially on an AMOLED display, they could have just cut it off exactly where the notch is. Absolutely not understandable for me, but what is still a great thing, and it's not a coincidence, or it looks like it, but Xiaomi phones have an above average oleophobic coating. Other than that, buttons don't rattle, sit well, everything is otherwise really great. Also, the side bezels are fine. So I really like the design, but I absolutely don't like the notch. Display, now finally an AMOLED, which is something a lot of people have been waiting for. Still though, the option for changing it to automatic increased in standard contrast, but automatic still allows you to change the warmth, but not increased. I don't get it. The good thing is though that this warmth sits fine. Now, I've measured 750 lux. It's not quite the same with an LCD display, but it is a very bright panel. It gets a little bit later bright though, because for example, 60% of brightness is pretty much exactly the same as 35 on the OnePlus. So it gets just bright a little bit later, but therefore it gets quite dark. Viewing angles are stable. You see some more array and you see maybe some flickering, but that's due to the camera. The display is absolutely lovely, even though I have to say, in a side-by-side comparison, it's just about as good as on the 5T, which is just about as good as on the OnePlus 6. So they're all about as good. In my opinion, the lower res AMOLED display, or let's say not quite Quad HD res, is still absolutely fine. No complaints for me. It is a lovely display, well calibrated. I like that. So I would say let's go to the sound. No dual speaker system anymore. That's the one big downside. Other than that, I have to say it's loud enough, absolutely. It's about on a OnePlus 6 level, which is not nearly on a OnePlus 5T level. So the OnePlus 5T sounds still a lot better, but the sound quality on its own is good and it's loud enough. So it's a good speaker, but nothing more, nothing less. The headphone jack though, which is not a real part of the phone, but in terms of a dongle, is still one of the best ones, because Xiaomi just pushes more power through it and you get more volume. Sound is still clean. You have options for an equalizer and such things. So still absolutely one of the better. And I would actually say that Xiaomi makes pretty much the best headphone jacks, even though with a dongle, besides maybe LG phones. Okay, performance would be the next thing. Let's stop all and launch a few apps. As you can see, all of them launched very quick. And as you can see, it is a super responsive device. You can see that. That's obvious. It's fast. And it's smooth. And with an AMOLED, usually it also looks smoother. And it is. But maybe you've sometimes already seen it. And for example, techtablets.com told me that if you use the full screen gesture, so if you make the buttons disappear, which is something that I can show you. Full screen mode. Nah, that's wrong. This is what I meant. Don't show it again. No, I don't need to learn it. I already know it. So swiping up, for example, from the sides gets you back. It's nice, but he says that it then just has more stutters and lag, which definitely could be. But the thing is that I already see more, I would say, frame drops than I would like to see, because everything is smooth, but in some situations there is still a little bit more lag. Otherwise, if that lag would be gone, it's just about as good as on OnePlus 6, Xperia XZ2, or it's, let's say, 95% there, because for some reason it's not quite super consistent. And I got the latest ROM and I asked someone, because I'm using the Chinese one, asked someone with a global ROM, and he says he has the same slightly performance issues. So I'm not saying these are performance issues, but I'm just telling you that there is more potential there. And it seems, what I'm also seeing on the Mi 8 SE, that it's not perfectly optimized. And now obviously people could blame it on my slow internet here, the Wi-Fi, but that has nothing to do with that. As you can see here, everything is fine. Just because something not loading has no impact on the performance. Okay. Next thing. Gaming performance is good. Of course, it will throttle at some point. 845 just does it, but it's top performer. Everything is fine. Battery. Full charge, I think 1 hour and 30, pretty much as always. Yeah, I think it's actually a little bit slower than it was on the Mi 6, but it's fine. 5 minutes plus minus, doesn't care. Now, battery life, I'm not going to really tell you any numbers, since I've used it about 1.5 weeks or 2 weeks in the USA, 1 week here, but with completely different usage as I usually have, so I can't give you comparable numbers. What I would tell you is it's about on par. It should be, at least theoretically, with a OnePlus 6 or with a OnePlus 5T, but I didn't quite get that. Mostly because I think the standby drain was a little bit weaker. It drains a little bit faster, but in use the differences are way smaller. Then it's pretty much on that level. It will get the same 4 stars as both of those get. So absolutely very good battery life. For a flagship, it gets the job done. No issues at all. Standby drain, well, MIUI could improve a little bit on that. Other than that, super nice. What I have to talk about though is a little bit things like reception and so on, which has a thing to do. Because I've used it in the US, reception was fine, but what I had an issue with, not data speeds, not calling, was GPS. That's usually something that I mentioned in the software part, but I'm gonna include it in here. My GPS, especially the dual GPS, the praised one, did not really work at all because either my device is a little bit of an issue, but my compass, my accelerometer, turned around all the time, and when I used navigation, it was turning around all the time. So, yeah. What I have to also complain about, since I am the nitpicker now, is the UI. I always actually back in the past said how much I like it because of the functionality and extra features, and I still do. But there are a few things that by now I don't really like so much anymore. And back then I actually gave it like 4.5 stars, and I'm now down to 3.5 because of a few annoyances. Like, for example, yeah, no app drawer. I don't really care. But this thing, as you can see here, Smart Task Cluster and displaying over other apps, is something that you usually long press and then disable the notification. But it's grayed out. I can't. To get that done, I would need an app like, for example, Cleaner. Then I can get rid of that. But that's not what I want to do. Same as, for example, you just have to get through other hoops. Because if we go into additional settings, if we go into developer settings, there is the option. Where is it? Smallest width, where you can change the DPI, and it does not do anything on neither phone. So what you have to do is, if you want to change the DPI, is to go through ADB, or you have to root your device. That's just an extra step that shouldn't be necessary. Just in case you want to know what version I'm running, here it is. I'm running, it just got updated yesterday, 9.67. That's the Chinese stable, but nothing should really be different compared to the global ROM. Other than that, you see the settings we have. What is actually nice, raise to wake, because if you have your phone sitting, you grab it and it turns on, and if you have face unlock, if I would have pointed at me, as you have seen, it would have unlocked, which is very nice to see. Double tap to wake is also there. As you can also see, there is an always on display, and notifications get shown, at least for the one that I get is, for example, Gmail, it got that. Sound options, notification, you see connection speed, carrier name, battery indicator, percentage. Oh, it's actually there. Sorry, my bad. I think they introduced that because this option was not there on the version when I got it. So, all fine. I'll take that back. At least one annoyance less. Full screen display I've already talked about. You can hide the notch, mirror the buttons, and not use the on-screen buttons. Blah, 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 blah. That's it. The good thing about MIUI still is the functionality, the long-term support. If you use it, especially with the global, or if you use the Xiaomi EU ROM, or if you root it, all is fine. And you get it for quite a long time. But it's not really close to Android itself, and therefore some things just don't work properly. Because, for example, I had a rental that had Android Auto, and I was really excited to use it. It worked absolutely fine with the OnePlus 5T, but not with the Mi 8 for some reason. Because what I had there, I had the interface, and I had a big black bar at the bottom and the top where the icons are, so I couldn't use it. So maybe that's because it isn't quite close enough to stock. So just keep in mind that some small things might not work. Other than that, camera software, it's still the same. I would wish for a slight change by now, but it's totally an okay. What I've noticed though, that switching from portrait mode, which seems very intensive on the CPU and in general, takes quite a while, especially if you use it, and sometimes it hangs like for a couple of seconds and you have to switch. As for example, I did a portrait shot, wanted to do another one, I couldn't, I had to get into portrait mode again. But other than that, you have HDR modes, AI, and so on and so forth. And now let's get into the pictures. I'm gonna show you the normals one that I usually use for my reviews, and later on some maybe from the USA, from my New York trip, in case you're interested. Other than, if not, just jump over it. Okay, low light, in my opinion, absolutely okay. It's a little bit blurry, sometimes you have to have a steady hand, but the quality is good, absolutely. Outside, also nice sharpness. Okay, I have to say that personally I would wish for a little bit more sharpness and a little bit more punchy colors, but that would be less realistic, and you can actually change these presets or these kind of options in the camera app. So in the camera app you can change it to make the pictures already sharper, so you don't need to do it, and that is absolutely fine. But very realistic pictures. I still think that the portrait mode on the back camera doesn't really work well, but on the front camera really nice. As you can see here also, nice pics. A little bit on the softer side, but autofocus is amazing on this cam, and especially how easy it is to shoot. And I got so many pictures, actually this is with the AI mode. As you can see here, it gets a little bit more colorful, a little bit more contrast. In case you want that, use AI mode, no problems here. And yeah, selfies from this distance, a little bit blurry, which is normal. Here, sweet spot, and here even better. Next pic, this is without portrait mode, so everything normal. And this is with portrait mode. Okay, the portrait mode cuts off a little bit off my head, but otherwise I think it does a really good job. It looks really nice. It's maybe not perfect, but definitely close enough from what I can see. I like the sharpness, I like the colors. Everything's okay. Nice. Next, inside, pretty much the same. Not really much else to say here. Also, in quite low light situations, the pictures from the front-facing cam seem very convincing. Inside here with normal, actually quite bad lighting in the corners as well. All is fine. Now what I'm gonna do now is show you the video. And I'll get to the mic that you maybe already heard. This is 4K. The issues with the kind of artifacting with faster speeds are gone by now. The autofocus is super fast, almost a little bit too fast. It could be a little bit more subtle, but as you can see here, 4K, no stabilization. In case that's important for you. I mean, with open camera it sometimes works, but I've heard it doesn't yet work with this cam. But the quality is fine, and it would have been 5-star quality, but without OIS and without some things, and there is no 60 frames mode, which is still something that I don't get why MIUI doesn't include that yet. But if you want really good stabilization, then use the 1080p, which obviously doesn't have quite the same quality, but it feels way better, and it feels more natural compared to what the OnePlus 5T or 6 offer in terms of stabilization. Quality is still good. The autofocus is extremely fast. Okay, front-facing cam. I think they heavily improved on that, especially in terms of video, because the video now looks way more natural. It doesn't seem so kind of blurry and then over sharpened. It seems way better now. It's shaky though, not really stabilized, which is the one sad thing, because otherwise quality seems fine. What is not fine though, and I don't get it, Xiaomi, what's going on with your microphone? And no, I can show you a little bit of a demo, but
I'm curious because usually they always mess it up. Frame rate doesn't drop.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how loud that was, but it's so thin, it's so shrill, and it's not a good quality at all. So absolutely not okay. And if you want to take some seconds now, I'll go through a few of my kind of favorite pictures that I took in New York. Obviously, just switch in case you don't care. Now, as you can see, this is actually a nice picture, I have to say, because it got the darkness from the parking lot quite good inside and outside. Really nice pictures. Like I said, all of them are a little bit soft. But the great thing is I took actually so many pictures mid-walking, so not even stopping or anything, and it got all of them absolutely right in my opinion. So I'm really happy with those. So nice cam, nice pics, and it's of course easy to make spectacular looking pictures in New York, especially on the Times Square and such, but the cam did a great job. And if I would have used AI mode, they would have looked even more so appealing. But these are, I have to say, very natural, very, not kind of softer. So it feels realistic. It's a pretty good representation of what I've seen there. Nice. And obviously you still have the chance to mod them otherwise. Let's go quickly through a few more. As you can see, also the 2x zoom is okay, but it's not really better than if you would zoom out afterwards. Yeah, this was also a really nice shot, or this one. Great, I like that. So I'm happy with what I got. But I'm actually gonna stop this now. Don't wanna bore you too much. And go to the conclusion. And let's talk about why I actually, as much as I like some of the aspects, can't really recommend it. The reason is the OnePlus 6. And I know this sounds odd, but this is available for a little bit under $400. And the OnePlus 6 is like $530, so it's still at a maximum 150 cheaper, or let's say 100 cheaper if you maybe have some import costs so here and far off. But I would say that the 100 extra are totally worth it, because the OnePlus 6, even though it's also not a perfect phone, it's just a more polished, more refined product compared to this way here. We don't have the bad notch. We have a pretty much just about as good display. Speaker is pretty much just about as good. Performance is a little bit better. Battery life is also a little bit better. Software is by now vastly better. The camera overall is also actually quite close. So it's not a huge difference. But the few annoyances that I have here are just, like I said, the notch. No notifications, no nothing. And the fact that you don't really know sometimes that you got something. Then a notch is also bigger than it should be. If you don't care about that, absolutely fine, then ignore it. Then it is a great phone. And if you are already using a phone with MIUI, you should also be concerned about the annoyances that I have. For example, I can't change my DPI, and it doesn't work with some services sometimes, which when the global ROM should be less of an issue. And for example, the other things that I mentioned, I don't want to get into that. If those things are of no concern for you, and the microphone, especially on the video side, is no deal breaker for you, then it's absolutely a top phone. But for example, I have the 5T still, which is, I guess if you can somewhere find it, still cheaper than this one. I guess so. And I would actually prefer this one, just because I don't have the annoyances of this one. It's just not what the Mi 6 was. The Mi 6 was a compact, great in-hand feel, which this one obviously is, with everything as good as it could be back then. But this is not as good as it can be. As I said, the battery, in my opinion, could be bigger. The speaker could be better. And a few other things. So I know the conclusion isn't quite what you want maybe to hear, but I'm just a little bit disappointed because I had so high hopes and they got a little bit shattered. It's still a great phone, but if you actually ask me, what would I recommend you? Mi Mix 2S or the Mi 8? I would have a hard time because I like the in-hand feel so much, and if the Mi Mix 2S would have the tempered edges, I would definitely go for the Mi Mix 2, which I think it's just a little bit more bulky. But otherwise, performance was back then better than it was on this one. The camera is pretty much close, but the front-facing camera is noticeably better. That's important. Go for this one. If you don't care about the whole notch thing as well, and the headphone jack is gone on both anyways. The display now has AMOLED compared to IPS. So there are a few things going for this one, but especially since they're at the same price and you don't want the notch, which is for some people just a deal breaker, you get still actually with the Mi Mix 2S a more coherent package. Oh wait, I almost forgot one thing. One more reason why the Mi 8 also these days has a little bit of a harder stand is not just the reason that the OnePlus 6 is a little bit more expensive and therefore is the more mature product, but the reason is also that there is now a competitor out of their own house, and I'm pretty sure you all know what I'm talking about, the Pocophone F1, which brings a dual speaker, which brings a bigger battery life, and maybe even a more robust outer shell that is out of plastic which won't shatter. Maybe not quite the camera, but for considerably less money, you might even get the better package. So Xiaomi versus Xiaomi, well, they wanted to have that fight. So that's what makes it a little bit harder these days to recommend the Mi 8. That's where I'm gonna leave it. If you have anything else to say, keep in mind that I am the nitpicker, so that's what I'm doing. So, I can't really tell you to not be too hard on me, because if I'm hard on the device, you can be hard on my review as well, so that's fine. Otherwise, I wish you a nice day. Until next time, bye.